President Obama is coming back from his globe-trotting trip without the big trade deal he wanted. Has he lost his diplomatic mojo? Passengers on that crippled cruise from hell are back on dry land. But will the ship's return bring on a flood of lawsuits? We'll talk with one passenger we followed throughout the ordeal. The shocking video. A high school basketball coach caught on tape whipping his players with a weightlifting belt. We'll talk with an outraged parent. And Cindy McCain butts heads with her senator husband over Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Our government treats the LGBT community like second-class citizens. Why shouldn't they?
Her new ad linking support for Don't Ask, Don't Tell to bullying and suicides. Joining the discussion today, the Washington Post's Jonathan Capehart, Democratic strategist Todd Webster, investigative reporter Michelle Sagona, and Senator-elect Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Good Friday morning. I'm Chris Jansing. This is Jansing and Company. The president's trip to Asia was supposed to take him away from all the political problems here at home and get him back onto the international stage where he could rack up a couple of quick wins. Instead, he's coming home largely empty-handed. There's no agreement on two major deals, a free trade agreement with South Korea and an overall economic strategy to help U.S. manufacturing. But here's how he sees this trip.
Sometimes I think naturally there's an instinct to focus on the disagreements because otherwise these summits might not be very exciting. It's just a bunch of world leaders sitting around intervening. And so, there's a search for drama. In each of these successive summits, we've actually made real progress.
But how do you define progress? Well, let's bring in our company, conservative commentator Kristen Soltis, Jonathan Capehart, and Todd Webster. Okay, the expectation is he's going to go over there, he's going to get a little bit of his mojo back, look presidential, show that he has influence on the world stage, and very importantly, bring back some jobs. Jonathan, how did he do?
Didn't do so hot. He was going to South Korea hoping that he would come back with the deal in hand, that he'd be standing there with the South Korean leader and saying, voila, here's the deal. It did not happen. And, after the midterm elections, we've seen this before. American presidents go abroad when things go south electorally at home, and to leave South Korea sort of empty-handed is bad. But, there's still some time for him to get this done.
Well, Kristen, that's the argument he makes. It may be a few weeks. We're going to push for this, but we may well get this done.
Well, it needed to be a sort of quick win to change the narrative, because the narrative right now is that Obama lost this election because the economy is bad and Obama didn't have the solutions to fix it. This would have been a quick way to say we're going to be able to bring, tens of thousands of jobs, particularly to the automotive sector. In the Midwest is where Democrats saw some really big losses. So this would have been a great win for him, and it's unfortunate for the Obama administration that it's going to take longer for them to get it.
Todd, how much do you think this has to do with the election? In the New York Times, Jeffrey Frieden, a political scientist at Harvard, argued that he's got an essentially fragile relationship with the Senate, and it would be too risky to compromise abroad, come home, and then have to work to fold all of this in. So was it better essentially for him to come back with nothing than to make concessions?
Well, look, I think that it should surprise nobody that these foreign leaders are not thrilled with the fact that the Fed has pumped $600 billion into the United States economy, the effect of which will be to make U.S. products abroad less expensive. So if the net result of this is that we're going to be selling more iPads and more Cadillacs and more Chevy Volts and more Starbucks and more Happy Meals to foreign countries, I think that's good. It's a good thing for American workers. It's good for Detroit. It's good for Seattle and Boeing. It's good for Silicon Valley. And so I think, in the longer term and in the bigger picture here, it's not surprising that these other countries were not thrilled about it. And it's also something that the Chinese have been doing, manipulating their currency for decades. If the net benefit is to help American workers, to help build more cars and build more airplanes, then I think that's good for the American economy and it's good for America's workers.
I wonder, big picture, though, Jonathan, again, Americans, we know, we don't have to say it, but we will, worried about jobs, worried about the economy. Are they reading this as failure? Are they saying, well, we thought you were coming back with jobs?
Well, remember, the American people aren't, generally speaking, terribly interested in what other people think about us. But I bet if the president were able to...
In fact, it's funny. We can criticize us, right? But don't you people over there start getting down on us?
Right. So the fact that the president's coming back empty-handed from South Korea. I don't think the American people care as much, but they would care if the president were able to come back, as Kristen says, say, hey, look, I've got this agreement, and here's how many jobs it's going to create, and isn't it, hey, I'm working for you.
So is the big push on now? Big push is on by the administration.
Oh.
Let's try to get this done in the next couple weeks.
They thought they were going to be able to get this done before Air Force One landed in Seoul, and the fact that it
and then
happen.
if it does get done, and it's 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, he still gets political advantage, though, doesn't he? I mean, it's not the win he wanted to bring home, as Jonathan just said, but a win is a win is a win.
It'll look good. The other thing that he'll need to do is focusing again on that sort of broader economic strategy, the idea that he's trying to get the rest of the global community on board with this additional fiscal stimulus strategy, and he's facing some pushback in Europe from folks like Chancellor Merkel in Germany, who's saying, stimulus isn't necessarily what's going to make our economy better. We want to do these austerity measures. So that's another battle that he's got to fight on an international stage, one that he didn't do so well on the domestic stage. 65% of voters in this election said that stimulus either didn't work or it hurt the country's economy. He's got to fight that battle overseas now.
Kristen, Jonathan, Todd, thank you. We're going to see you back just a little later on in this hour.
Our political and religious leaders tell LGBT youth that they have no future. They can't serve our country openly.
That is part of a new ad where Cindy McCain openly disagrees with her husband. And it's not just don't ask, don't tell. She actually takes it a step further. She really pushes a link between that military policy and the recent string of bullying cases and suicides by gay teenagers. The ad points the finger at the government.
Our government treats the LGBT community like second-class citizens. Why shouldn't they?
Let's bring back our company, Kristen Soltis, Jonathan Capehart, and Todd Webster. This is interesting, Jonathan. I mean, John McCain now says we're waiting for the results of that survey, which we've heard 70% of the tens of thousands of people who took it in the military, their families, say they support a repeal of that ban. But what does it tell you when you see this kind of essentially debate going on between a high-profile veteran senator and his wife?
Well, you know where I want to be on Thanksgiving?
At their
I want
house.
to be at the McCain house.
What do you suppose they're talking about there?
Well, clearly, this has been terrific. Cindy McCain is out there in this ad. Cindy McCain and their daughter, Meghan McCain, did a no-hate campaign about opposing Prop 8 a few months ago. I mean, what it says is that the country is shifting, and that Senator McCain is behind, meaning on the opposite side of that shift. The country is moving, being more accepting, more open to gay people and to allowing them to serve. And so for this to come out, and especially now when Congress is trying to figure out how they're going to to pass a repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the timing of this ad coming out, or at least us talking about it, is actually rather interesting and might put some pressure on Senator McCain to not go ahead with his threat to filibuster.
I'm curious, as I watch this, Todd, do you think if there is indeed a shift, do you think it's generational? Do you think that this really is a right-left divide, or is it more a younger-older divide in general?
I mean, look, I think that well, first of all, I think it's the right policy. I think if the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, many of the military brass have said, you know what, it's more important that you can shoot straight than you are straight. We're fighting 2 wars abroad. We can't afford to be losing soldiers. So it's the right policy for the military. But I think for the American people, we are a country, our Constitution, the first 10 amendments were a Bill of Rights. We are supportive of individual rights, individual freedoms and liberties, whether it was allowing women the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment, whether it's the Civil Rights Bill in 1964, that there is an evolution towards providing people more rights, more freedoms, and more liberties rather than restricting them. When you look at how a slice of conservatives who try to use gays as a political tool in pushing a constitutional amendment to ban gay marriage, that vote in 2006 got 49 votes. It needed 66 as a constitutional amendment. So I think that the capacity for the American people to be a tolerant people, a small L libertarian people, is what you're seeing now with Don't Ask, Don't Tell.